History of Violence is a movie that is based off a graphic novel. It's directed by David Cronenberg and it stars Viggo Mortensen and Maria Bello, as well as Ed Harris and William Hurt. It follows the story of this man, Tom Stall, played by Mortensen, who defends himself and some customers at his diner. He and his family own this diner, and he ends up killing these two men in order to save the people in this diner, and becomes a local hero. And as a result of that, some gangsters see his story on the news and recognise him as being this other man that was once a gangster, a violent gangster, and they come calling. And basically that sets off a chain of events that just start to spiral even more and more out of control. And really what the film is about is how people react to these acts of violence, and how they react to learning that their father or their husband has a history of violence. It's a film that's about truth and about identity. I think that's most evident, I would say, in two particular sequences in the film, which is two sex scenes. Now, I personally, I'm not someone who likes sex scenes in films. That they're often just there for the sake of gratuity. They're quite uncomfortable to watch, quite embarrassing, quite frankly. They're often just, don't need to be there. This is one of the few films, I would say, where the two sex scenes actually add something. Like if anything, a lot of what the film is saying comes out of those two sex scenes. Let me explain. So in the first one, which is like in the first act of the film, so to speak, it shows us this husband and wife. It shows us who they are as people. They love each other. They're playful in the bedroom. They're taking on roles. She dresses as a high school cheerleader. You know, they're fantasizing. They're not playing themselves, but they are in love with each other. You can see in the way that they touch. You can see in the way that they smile, the way that they look into each other's eyes. They're deeply in love with each other. They trust each other, even though they're playing characters with each other in the bedroom. You flip to the second sex scene, which comes much later in the film, once all this stuff has been unearthed, once we learn who Tom Stall really is, and the acts of violence, the multiple acts of violence that have been committed since the previous sex scene. And everything's laid bare. This couple now truly know who each other is. Tom Stall is no longer this quiet middle American guy who's just trying to look after his family. He's got this history. And yet the sex scene plays rough. It plays without compassion. It's just very matter of fact. And the love that was once there in the previous sex scene doesn't seem to be there anymore. This couple is being truthful. They're still being truthful. They know who each other is. They are being themselves, and yet the love is no longer there. And that's a result of that violence that has come into their lives. That's what it does. It infects their relationship, who they are as people, right down to their core. I find those scenes interesting in just where they're positioned, how they play, and what they have to say in regards to the rest of what's going on in the film. That you can know someone or think you know someone and truly love them, and then you can find out who they really are and truly know them, and that all changes. I think the film also takes a slightly less in-depth look, but a look nonetheless at societal reactions to violence. Like you look at what Tom Stall does in the diner when he's defending people, and that violence there becomes acceptable to the masses. It becomes acceptable to the people who eat it up on the nightly news when they're reporting about what's happened, and this guy's a hero. You know, he's been turned into this hero. Now, where I think the film misses a trick is in not exploring that further as more details are brought to light. I'd have liked to have seen how the news media kind of turns on Tom Stall as more information comes out about him. I think it would have been interesting to see that maybe at least one reporter finding out who this guy is and then changing the tack, changing how he is then perceived. Like once you know his past, the violence that was once perceived as a great thing, as a heroic act, suddenly gets turned and twisted into, well, the opposite, that it's just the acts of a violent man. I think that would have been a further way to explore societal reactions to violence. But I think the film only goes halfway, I would say. There's still a lot there to be said about how we view violence when it's viewed through the lens of so-called self-defense. And that's explored a little bit further through The Son, in what I would say is probably the weakest handled element of the plot, maybe down to the performances, I would say. So the son character, Tom's son in the film, he's being bullied at school. I would say that element is handled pretty heavy-handedly. I think the performances there from the bullies and whatnot are very one note. It feels like something you would see on an episode of the OC or something like that. It's just, yeah, okay, very one note bullies, they're pushing him around. And then later on, because of the actions of his father and learning a little bit maybe about what may have been in his father's past, they kind of give him license to then behave in a similar way. So I think there's much to be said there about the influence that a father can have on their children. How one conducts themselves leaves an impression on your kids if you have kids. Yeah, again, as I say, that is explored a little bit here. Maybe a little too heavy-handedly, I would say, but still explored nonetheless. I like the way the film shows us the escalation through the ranks of the mob. Like we start off the film with the two guys who enter the diner. These are like low-level mobsters, kind of your hitmen for your mobsters. Once they're taken out, we're introduced to Ed Harris, who seems like he's going to be the main villain of the film. He's someone who comes back from Tom's past, and you're like, okay, so this guy's the real deal. But actually, he's a mid-level guy on the road to William Hurt's character, who is the top-level guy, presumably. It's just the fact that Tom has to deal with all these people, all these different levels of mobsters, in order to get them out of his life and go back to his life, which, as I say, given the violence that has taken place and given the truth that has come out about him, is his life even going to be there waiting for him when he gets back? We have a final scene in the film that leaves that very questionable. Like, he's with his family, but are his family truly with him? Can he go back to familial life, or has it now been forever changed? Great performances from Viggo Mortensen, and Maria Bello, but like Mortensen doing a really good job of showing us these two men essentially conflicting, fighting essentially for the identity. Is he Tom Stall, or is he this other guy, this gangster guy? It's like sometimes it feels like he doesn't even know. The way he talks about himself in the third person, sometimes it's like this dude genuinely seems like he might actually have a split personality at times. Even his wife kind of calls it out at one point. The way Mortensen plays that is really great. I also think Maria Bello is fantastic in this. The way she deals with that, the way she goes from being this doting, loving wife to having to wrestle with who her husband truly is and the things that he may have done and the reasons he may have done them, and how she changes towards him, how her demeanour, her whole, like I say, going from that scene in which she's lovingly wanting to make love to him and to the later on where it's not so much. She does a wonderful job there, really great job. As I say, the performances I would say are weakest are in the kids, the teenagers, but again, a lot of that could be the writing as well. It feels very one note. It's an interesting film. It's an entertaining film. You know, like the violence itself becomes entertaining because, again, like you know, you have these gangsters who are coming up against Tom Stall, and you know that they should know better. You know that they should back off, and if they did back off, this would all go a lot easier. Things could just, you know, be ignored, but obviously they're mobsters, so they're not just going to stay away, and because of that, it becomes somewhat entertaining seeing how Tom deals with them. Although, again, as I say, it does make you think about the violence that is taking place and how you should view it. But yeah, interesting film. Not an absolute classic, I would say, but I'd say it's still one of David Cronenberg's better films. It's up there with The Fly for me. I'm not a big Cronenberg fan, but when he's on form, I think he produces very good movies like this. There you go. It's my thoughts on A History of Violence. But what about you? Have you seen it? Have you read the graphic novel? I've never read the graphic novel. I don't know if it's overly faithful to it or not, but yeah, I'd be interested if you have read it. Is it worth a read, and how does it fare compared to the film? Do leave your thoughts on the film down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.